Hey, Sarah Jo here. In this video, I'll be showing you how to create a single turn hem using a cover stitch machine. The first thing you'll need is fabric. I recommend a knit fabric since the whole point of a cover stitch machine is to give the hem stretch. A ruler is optional, but I prefer to use one to make sure my hem allowance is correct. An ironing board and iron will be your best friend when hemming anything at all, so make sure to have that plugged in and ready to go. Pins are totally optional. I prefer not to use them since that's how we were trained in college, but if the fabric doesn't want to cooperate, they'll come in handy. Finally, choose a matching thread. I'm using a contrasting color in the video so you can see where I stitched. To begin, find the hem allowance in the pattern. In this instance, I'm using a 1-inch hem allowance. I prefer anything from a 1/2 inch to 1 inch because it leaves a little room for error. Fold the hem over so the wrong sides of the fabric are together. Again, I'm using a 1-inch hem allowance, so I'll just use my ruler to make sure that it is 1 inch. Once that's folded over, I like to give it a good press to hold it in place. If your fabric doesn't want to cooperate, this is a good time to use the pins or even some spray starch to give your fabric a little extra stability before sewing. Keep in mind, you'll be hemming with the right side of the fabric up, so place your pins accordingly. The pressing worked really well on this fabric, so I won't be using any pins. Place the fabric in the machine so the right side of the garment or fabric is facing up. You won't be able to see the edge you folded under while pressing, which is why I suggest using a larger hem allowance. I like to line the fold of the hem up with the edge of my presser foot. If I were sewing a garment hem or sleeve hem, I would typically start at the side seam or underarm seam. This just hides where you stopped and started sewing better. Continue to sew your hem. My cover stitch machine has a few different hem options, but my go-to is the wide double needle cover stitch. I linked an article in the description below that goes more in depth of the different types of stitches that this machine does. Once you're done sewing, you'll pull out the thread, cut the thread, and flip your project over to make sure you caught all of the fabric. If you used a 1-inch hem allowance like me, you'll have a decent amount of excess fabric on the hem. I'll show you how to take care of that in the next step. You can see why you have to stitch with the right side up. That's what makes the 2 rows of stitching like you see on t-shirt hems. If you did it the other way, the loops would show on the right side of the garment. To get rid of this excess fabric, I simply cut it off. Personally, I'd rather take the time to do this than fight with my cover stitch machine to make sure I catch all of the hem while sewing. Small scissors definitely work best for this, but mine are in need of a good sharpening, so large scissors it is. Be super cautious on this step, not to cut through the right side of the fabric or the stitching. I just cut right above the stitching line, going slow and checking frequently to make sure I'm just cutting the excess fabric from the hem. To finish off, I give it one last press to remove any wrinkles or puckering that might have occurred during sewing. And there you have it, a cover stitched hem. If you need more help or want visuals or to read through these instructions, I also linked a blog post in the description below. Happy sewing!